Hello and welcome to today's Communications Room session. Mark and I, we had quite some interesting and revealing discussions in the meantime on the topic, collected some feedback, and particularly some counterparts actually raised the question, why do we do this on the one hand side, but also how exactly does the Communications Room work, and what do we do in such a room? So that's why we picked this topic today, to give you some more insights in how we see the topic, how we would plan and put across such a communication room, how we would make it happen. But let's maybe start with the why, and perhaps over to you, Mark, to give us an
Yeah,
insight why we think this is an
yeah.
important topic now.
Thank you, Hartmut. Happy to be here in our communications room lunch dialogue. Um, yeah, we started to have a few discussions, like Hartmut already said, on our model and how others do see that. And starting with the why, I think we have uh, built a very common ground, let me put it that way. So, whoever we have been talking to, from a board member of a bank to other managers to now students as well, we will come to that later. The Our thesis of the Corona year 2020 as the tipping year for much faster and much deeper changes than ever, resulting in the need to rethink communications, has been unquestioned as far as I remember. Am I right, Hartmut?
Yes, sure. So this is the point that has been highlighted in all the discussions I can remember, that this became present, and also the fact and the point, I think, that we cannot solve also today's problem, the new problems, the complex, much more complex challenges that we have today, and also, by the way, independent of Corona. So I think it refers to the entire society, where we see more of these problems, these complex problems, that these cannot be solved with the old way of thinking, and with that also not with the old way of communicating, where we just transported information from A to B in the most
Yeah,
efficient way. But now this aspect of sense making is in the foreground for everyone, because we cannot say these if then relations just disappeared, doesn't work anymore.
yeah. So since there has been that agreement on the why, um, we even found that people would agree on the what to do now. Now, uh, when the 21st century has really started, and this thesis that we have been putting on the table is being agreed upon as well widely, that until 2019 it was more or less working in the 20th century world, somehow having the feeling that things would have to be changed, but there was not a real need. And now the real need is clear, and what to do is pretty clear as well. So really take it as a chance and rethink the comms approach, Hartmut, as you said, from just conveying information or transporting information from a sender to a receiver, like in the old 20th century world, but really starting something new, at least in official corporate public communications, which is a dialogue that earns this name, dialogue.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and how to, and that means not only rethink the approach and the purpose of comms, but rethink what kind of mindset is necessary. to be successful in this new world, in this new situation, and of course then rethink the approach and tools of comms.
Mm-hmm.
And we have had some great discussions with people who told us that they did a lot of things in terms of new communications, which I personally would not have really expected to that extent. So there seems to be not only a common understanding that things have to be changed, but many people seem to have switched into the doing mode already. So, Hartmut, when you recall that our discussion with that board member of a bank who said, a regional bank, who said in the beginning of the pandemic, we board members had a daily 15 minutes talk accessible to every employee of the company. Yeah? 50 minutes status discussion accessible to every employee of the company every day. That impressed me because we know that transparency is a very important part of the new communications, and that things like that are very good levers. But I would not have expected someone to be that consequent already. How was your impression?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would absolutely share this. Yeah, and so that this is one example, I think, where we've seen this growing consciousness for the need to communicate more, but also to do it in a dialogue form, I would say. And we've seen this also from other meetings. So you can transfer this to the customer front end, where suddenly people say, well, we need to redefine also our customer interface and come to a mode, for example, of co-creating more with our customers. There also have some examples from the banking, the financial services side, where these topics come up. We also heard it with a colleague we invited last time, actually, who worked in the agricultural machine tool business. So we will still release some snippets of this discussion in the near future, which was also very interesting and thought provoking, I think. And yeah, for example, with this example, whereas the idea to focus on the customer is not new, I think it's new that people now realize that actually the customer and the company, for example, they are both in the same boat, and we do not have the solution yet, so we cannot go to the drawer and pull out the right product or the right solution that we can put into place, but we need to sit together and co-create, find a solution together. So bring the ideas to the table and start into such a discussion with an open mind. And these, I think, are examples what we think would make a good communication room. Yeah, so what we found in these discussions actually is that that many companies, and particularly in the business-to-business world, so both in industry and in financing, for example, come to this point that we need to co-create actually with customers, so that they are not the solutions that we can pull from the drawer that are existent already, or concepts that have been available, or that can be researched somehow in the classic way, but that we need this new type of co-creation where we sit together at a table or meet together in a virtual room. And that's why we call it also a communications room. So we think this virtual rooms can likewise enable these co-creative discussions, so that we open such rooms that allow a type of communication that makes it possible to always create something new, because we cannot just look at what happened before, but we need, I think in many cases, or in most cases probably today, we need to find new solutions that work in the 21st century in this complexity that we have. And this, I think, is the main quality that we would like to put into such a communications room, so that we have an atmosphere, that we have an open space, and that such new solutions can be realized and can be found in discussion, in exchange, and in dialogue, like you mentioned, Mark.
Yeah, and maybe there's another very important effect of that kind of new approach. I would say a word to that in a second. And that is if you are working together on detailing a solution, ways to implement a solution, all who have been working on that are motivated and convinced from the very beginning. So in the old world, we both know that from our former living in corporate environments in the old world. A few people sat together, decided how to transform an organization, put together 50 to 100 slides, distributed the slides to all those affected, and then this was it. And the result was irritation, chaos, whatever you want. And why did I say kind of new? Because I think that for people like us who are old enough to have experiences from the 20th century world, it's kind of new. And when I take now our experience with the students from Ludwig Maximilian University in Munich that we've been starting to work with, for them it doesn't seem too new, let me put it that way, to work in a way of co-creation. To think about your individual purpose first, to understand that you need a certain kind of attitude. And that was for me very encouraging that not only those who are well established in the business world today, whom we have been discussing to, see the need to change and what to do, and not always the same way how to do it, but in a similar way at least. But that for the students, they themselves came up with things that we think are important, like be respectful to your counterpart, to your stakeholder when we use our business language. Be respectful. Have a mood of active listening. Yeah. Have empathy, and things like that. Without us telling them, they came up with a lot of those things. Build bridges between different opinions. There were many examples that were very encouraging and went, as I said, without having told them, without framing them, into the same direction.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case. And now that you refer to this, I mean, we also try to invite them actually, not to a presentation, but try to invite them also to a communications room that allows such a discussion and such findings, which was also a kind of practical application of what we are trying to do. And it shows actually that it works, and that people really come to this conclusion that that communication can create these connections, can create the relations. It opens the consciousness of people once you step into different stakeholder perspectives and also look at the topic from different angles, which is always necessary in this, and still be aware of your own purpose, because that's actually where we started with this team of students also, so that each participant and each member got aware of the own purpose to start with. So what's the own contribution and what's the impact I can have as an individual on what's happening around me. And this brings us, I mean, in this discussion with the students, it also brought us to the point that it was quite easy then to to define and identify some important topics they would like to discuss further. We also didn't give in now this semester we will focus on topic X or Y, but we asked them actually what are the topics that drive you most, and this also brought some clear and revealing results. I think that also in such a new group, then it's not so difficult to come to a common understanding of what is important for everyone. So this was also a key result for me.
Yeah. And common understanding is something that we have been mentioning before as part of our concept, that if you want to get somewhere and you want to make an impact, you need a common understanding first, and a common target or objective. Yeah. And I'm very optimistic that we will see great results with that team of students, because we almost unconsciously built in that first meeting that common mindset, and came to something that can be a common target, and so the next steps will be productive, most probably. I mean, I really was, again, because it's so important to me. I mentioned earlier in one of our former lunch dialogues that I'm really concerned about a society falling apart in more and more and more and more so-called minority groups who seem to have one common target, which is tell the others from a higher moral perspective that they are the most important minority group, which leads to just an exchange of positions and leads to nowhere, because nobody would listen anymore. They are all in descending mode. And therefore, I was so happy that many of the students themselves came up with we need to bring people together. And this makes me, my personal remark, very optimistic again, that we will be able to overcome that falling apart in tribes, as I called it before, to come back to, even as a society, a common mindset and a common understanding and respecting each other in a fruitful way.
Yeah, so that's definitely a good perspective for the whole thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, maybe to conclude today's session, because some of you also asked us, so what does or how does such a communications room look like in concrete terms? Is there a specific format for this? Is it a bar camp, or is it a Word Cafe or another type of discussion explicitly? So how do you see this, Mark?
I would say it depends on the situation and the team and the identified stakeholders you want to work with, and then you choose the best appropriate tool, and be pragmatic, be as pragmatic as possible. And this is, so to say, one of the lessons of complexity as well. The more complex a world gets, the more pragmatic you have to act. Of course, based on fact finding, and of course, based on conclusions you draw from facts, your experience, and your expertise. And still, be pragmatic, and that's very important. And therefore, whatever tool suits best, this is then the one. And maybe this is correlates with transparency and openness as well. Not just promote one tool and this should be it, but be open in your co-creation process to then identify together what is the appropriate way forward.
Yeah.
Very simple, but simple in many cases is better
Mhm.
than complicated.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think also finding the right tool in that respect should not be too difficult. So if you just refer to these actually then quite simple rules of new communication, to put the dialogue in the forefront, look that there is an exchange, look that new connections are made, but also that people interact. So there's not one-way types of communication, but that you have these interactions, like we have today, like we could have
Yeah,
with much larger audiences, for example, also on this Wanda
yeah,
platform. But I would agree also the platform or the tool in the end doesn't matter. So let's look at the topic, the question that is at hand, and
yeah.
then find a really interactive format that works.
That's the most important thing. I talked to an owner of a PR agency the other day, and he told me that he suggested that even in business conferences of big companies, uh, they should make create an atmosphere like in a cafe with chairs and tables and drinking and allowing smartphones, and then they looked at him as if he were mad, the people from the company,
Mhm.
and he said, "Yeah, the only thing that is important there is the content, and if the content is interesting enough,
Mhm.
people will listen in whatever setup."
Mhm.
Uh,
Mhm.
and this is what you said. Focus on the topic, focus on the related questions, focus on what makes your stakeholder awake at night concerning the topic, and then you will be able to come to a kind of fruitful and productive resonance in that concern.
Mhm. Excellent. Yeah, so I like this as a conclusion, actually, Mark. Thanks a
Thank
lot
you.
for the exchange again. Thank you all for listening. So hopefully we were able to shed some more light on the question, on the why, the what and the how, or the why, the how, and the what, however you see it,
Yeah.
of a communications room. And of course, if you have questions or ideas, suggestions, just reach out to us at www.communicationsroom.net, and there you'll also find our upcoming events and dates, trainings, and so on. So looking forward to staying in touch, and we'll be back at the latest in 1 week's time with a new video.
Okay.
Okay, so
Cool.
thanks, have fun, and see you soon.